What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review a mixtape by Young Jeezy. Basically, this project is called It's the World, and that came out in the late fall of 2012. Now, the thing about this particular project is this is kind of like an in-betweener session for Jeezy as far as that kind of went. He was kind of starting to get into like the second wind of his career as far as that kind of happened. Like the 2000s era Jeezy was a lot more kind of heavier, like vintage kind of trap highlights, songs like Soul Survivor and Trap Star and My Hood and some of those type ones. Go Get Us, some of those type ones, White Girl, some of those type ones as far as like the mid late 2000s kind of went. But after about like once the 2010s entered, it was kind of interesting to see where Jeezy kind of was, just because he took like just because he took 3.5 years off between 2008's The Recession and 2011's TM103 Hustler's Ambition. So it's kind of the concept. I kind of feel like the jet lag between those 3.5 years was kind of interesting for Jeezy, just because a new phase of kind of rap music had kind of happened. Things like ratchet music, things like Drake had kind of popped off, things like Young Money had kind of popped off, some differential things, 2 Chainz, Yo Gotti, folks like that, Future, some folks kind of that blew up in the mixtape scene that kind of shifted the tides as far as that kind of went. It was just different from the 2000s era mixtapes like Trap or Die and Can't Ban the Snowman and some of those type ones. It was interesting to kind of see how Jeezy fared with this particular stuff. This is a pretty solid mixtape here. It's not like perfect, but it's kind of like a miniature rendition of like the Recession in some ways. It's kind of like a miniature Recession in some ways, just with like updated kind of early 2010 sound as far as that kind of happens. There's some DJ Mustard and there's some DJ Mustard beats on here, and Mike Will made it beats on here, and just some trending kind of producers from the early 2010s as far as that kind of happens. So it's interesting to kind of see how this kind of went. But Jeezy kind of handles it for the most part, I would have to say. I do kind of feel like the second wind of Jeezy's career is not quite as boisterous as he was in like the 2000s, but it's not to say it's bad. It just is kind of a concept. It's just a different pitch. And I just kind of feel like there was just some growing pains. I just kind of feel like there was some growing pains as far as that kind of went for Jeezy's revamped kind of trap style as far as that kind of went. So it's just an interesting concept. But this mixtape did have some pretty good promotion about it. This project did have like a number of music videos released for it, so it's kind of the concept. Had at least 2 singles, one of which charted pretty high on the Billboard 100. So this mixtape had at least 2 singles, one of which charted pretty high on like the Billboard 100. So I just would have to say it's a good concept to kind of get that. This is back in like the early 2010s when mixtapes were kind of charting as far as that kind of happened with folks like Meek Mill, with folks like Juicy J and Meek Mill and Rick Ross and Lil Wayne and some of those type folks as far as that kind of happens. But Jeezy translated pretty well. This is a pretty serviceable mixtape and it does its justice. So I just would have to say it's like a miniature kind of Recession album as far as that kind of happens. It's got some good impactful kind of ones and just some good renditions. So talk about the 2 singles on this particular project. The first single is Get Right, and this came out in the fall of 2012. So this is a pretty nice one. This is kind of an imperative sounding kind of evening vibe, I would have to say. It's a solid mixtape hustle cut, definitely, and it's just a 2010 style of like that particular type hustle cut. I just would have to say it's kind of like a standard kind of motivational type tune that Jeezy would kind of do throughout the 2000s, just a 2010s rendition as to how that kind of happens. Just a nice bustling kind of one. This song just really feels like an ensnaring kind of twinkling kind of 2010s hustle type tune as far as that kind of happens. Just a 2010s trap type tune. It's a little bit vanilla, I would have to say, for Jeezy, but it does its justice. It does its justice for Jeezy. It's just a good re-up to kind of get from him after like the kind of relatively kind of awkward kind of fair and just reception that TM103 kind of had, which was a good album and it did pretty well, but it just was kind of offhanded for like his reception compared to his previous 2000s era albums. But this is like another good shot in the arm of like some Jeezy. It's a free cut. This whole mixtape is free, so it's a good concept to kind of re-up with Jeezy with some songs like this. But the better song on this particular album, this is the song that charted pretty high on this album, is R.I.P. And this has 2 Chainz on there. R.I.P. was produced by DJ Mustard. This is a really nice one. This is a surprise kind of hit nightclub bop, I would have to say. It's got a warped and kind of slizzard DJ Mustard beat, definitely. It's a pretty nice feel as far as that kind of goes. And it's just a blazed kind of pounding hit, I would have to say. So this is a pretty good highlight as far as kind of smoking. This is a pretty good blazed cut as far as smoking some green as far as that kind of happens. Just a good kind of hazy kind of nightclub hit as far as that kind of goes. Just a real kind of twinkling one. That's another good highlight as far as that kind of goes. DJ Mustard really did a good job with this particular one. He was on the rise in 2012 and 2013. So it's some good concepts. I like the fact that 2 Chainz was kind of on the song. It was a good look for him to kind of be on there, I would have to say. It was just an overall nice one. This is probably one of Jeezy's more notable songs of like the early 2010s, I would have to say, just because Jeezy was not always as chart heavy as he was in the 2000s. So it's just interesting that this is one of his more notable hits of like the past 10 or 12 years or so as far as that kind of happens, just being able to say. But it is a pretty good highlight. I definitely like this one. It's a notable one. It's definitely one to recommend, especially considering that this project is free. It's a good concept. So yeah. So this mixtape has 16 songs on on there, and out of those 16, I wound up recommending to you 10 and a half. So I'll go ahead and recommend. So I'll go ahead and recommend those 10 and a half songs. They would be Get Right, R.I.P., How It Feel, All the Same, Tonight, Just Got Word, Escobar, Turn Up or Die, Damn Liar, and Thank Me. And the almost song is Too Many Commas. So talk about Too Many Commas. Too Many Commas is some decent drill rap thunder. I would have to say it's a pounding party cut, but the beat is just not that attractive. I would have to say it's kind of the only problem with it. It's kind of a decent drill beat, but it just doesn't really do the song justice. It's kind of like it's like a song by Royce the 5'9". I forget what it's called. Like it was off of his 2011 album from Success Is Certain. I would have to say, and I really just did not care for that beat on that particular album by Royce the 5'9". But it's just kind of like it's one of those type ones that just has like a very operatic type beat as far as that kind of happens. It's just like a worse variation of something that Rick Ross would do with drill and Waka Flocka and some of those type of folks. It's not like a horrible song. I do like it, and it does serve its purpose as just being like a real ravenous and kind of raucous kind of party song. But it's just the beat is just kind of just not like as eloquent and as melodic as what it probably needs to be. It's just really like a clumsy kind of cumbersome kind of one. This is kind of the thing about it, but it's decent enough. It's just not super decent. It just kind of happens to be a thing. So, but there are some good bops on here as far as that kind of happens. How It Feels like another one that got some good promotion. I would have to say this is a vintage kind of trap cut. Definitely, it's a hood anthem reminiscent of old Jeezy. I would have to say, and it's a nice update of that particular style. So this is kind of one that felt like something that Jeezy would have done in like 2006 or 2008. It's the more 2010s rendition as to how that kind of happens. It's a good vintage. How It Feels, just a good vintage kind of one to kind of have in that sort of aspect as far as that kind of goes. Just a good highlight just in that sort of thing. Just like the concept of getting that one. It's just some vintage kind of hood anthem, strip club anthem, trap cut as far as that kind of goes. Just in the cut as far as that kind of goes. Definitely like that one. All the Same is a pretty good kind of woozy kind of DJ Mustard beat. Definitely like this one. E40 really fits this song pretty well. This is kind of like a West Coast type feel. I definitely like the concept of it. All the Same is basically like a woozy kind of evening out vibe. So I would have to say it's some mellow ratchet music. The song has some mellow ratchet music kind of feel about it, and it's just a nice club kind of kickback. So this is one to kind of relax in a club and just have some drinks in your system, just kind of kick back a bit and just have some R&R as far as that kind of happens. Just nightlife, but just in a more kind of comfy aspect. I just would have to say it's a good one to kind of have. Not quite as riveting as R.I.P., but definitely a good highlight to kind of have from DJ Mustard as far as I kind of have. Just a good kind of mellow, just a nice, good kind of woozy, kind of mellow type one to kind of have in that sort of aspect as far as that kind of goes. E40 does a really good job on his verse. He had a really stylish and swaggerish kind of one, so that's a good one. And then Tonight is a pretty good ladies cut with Trey songs on there. This is definitely an out in the wind kind of ladies bop, I would have to say. This song is some good evening fare, I would have to say, and it's just a good variation of like a 2010s promo and date night kind of hit, I would have to say. This is just a good concept for just some suave kind of feels. This is just a good 2010s variation of like some suave kind of mixtape date night type feels, just within that sense as far as like a good recent rendition as far as like free music kind of goes, just within that aspect. So it's a good one to kind of have. Like the concept when mixtape cuts kind of have like some promo and date night type feels. Definitely works pretty well as far as that kind of happens. Trey Songz does a pretty good job on here. So it's just, this is kind of like an esoteric and kind of secret Jeezy song, I would have to say about Tonight. It's just an overall smooth one. It's just a good concept to kind of have that. So, but another good ladies song on this particular project is Just Got Word, and this has YG on there. I guess initially, I kind of forgot that Jeezy kind of was one of the ones that initially kind of helped discover YG as far as that kind of happened, kind of got him to the forefront. But this is just a good tune to kind of have. This is just like a syrupy kind of fancy Times Sparrow, I would have to say. It's a suave kind of smoking Optimo cut, I would have to say, and it's just a refined ladies cut. So this is definitely one. It really feels like you're on some hotel type vibes, just graceful kind of suited up type tunes as far as that kind of happens, just looking nice, those sorts of things as far as that kind of happens. Just some real plush type stuff as far as that kind of happens, just the sophisticated ones. And this is another kind of graceful one to kind of have on this particular album, so it's just a nice one. Another kind of plush one on this particular mixtape is Escobar. This is definitely kind of like a plush outing fare, I would have to say. It's some graceful kind of social commerce, definitely. And it's just a nice, this song has like a nice soulful edge. That's a vibe, I would have to say. So it's just kind of, there's some nice ones on here. Jeezy has a series of kind of ladies songs and kind of plush type tunes that just work pretty well. I definitely feel like Tonight, Just Got Word, and Escobar are some real nice ones to kind of have for some sophistication, suaveness, as far as just being a little bit more sleek and that type of stuff as far as that kind of happens. Just being more sleek and that type of stuff as far as that kind of happens. And then there's also some Recession type tunes on here. I do like some of these kind of haunting trap cuts of Jeezy's Recession days. I like these kind of 2010s updates of some of these. I feel like Turn Up or Die and Damn Liar are some nice ones for that sort of thing. This would have to say Turn Up or Die is kind of like a grim, kind of leery trap bustle of a song. I would have to say it's half of this song is half party and half hustle, I would have to say, and it definitely reminds me of the Recession. So this is just an overall nice one. This has a little Boozy on there, but it's just kind of more in like a sense. He's just in the intro because he was in prison during this time, so it's just a good concept to kind of get. But it definitely reminds me of like a free version of like a Recession. It definitely reminds me of like a free version of like a Recession song, I would have to say. And then like Damn Liar's another one that's kind of like that. This one's kind of a motivated, kind of haunting. Damn Liar is basically one that's like a motivated, kind of haunting trap rumbler. I would have to say it's like a vintage Jeezy updated to like 2010s terms, I would have to say. So this is kind of one, this is like a bustling one. This is kind of more in like the pitch. This is kind of one that reminds me of like Go Crazy or Trap Star, something like that, just in a more kind of 2010s pitch as far as that kind of happens. Just a real kind of bustling one. These are the sorts of songs that Jeezy did on like Thug Motivation 101 and The Recession and some of those type tunes. This really kind of takes it back to vintage 2000 fare. Damn Liar and Turn Up or Die take it back to vintage 2000s fare for Jeezy as far as that kind of happens. Just more updated versions of that, so some good concepts as far as that kind of happens. And then Thank Me is a really nice one. This is a really litty type song. This is a litty kind of out on the town pizzazz, I would have to say. It's a flashy stunt song, definitely, and it's just the song's hype energy is very affable, I would have to say. This is probably one of the most lit beats on the whole particular mixtape, I would have to say. I'd probably say it's up there with R.I.P. and a little bit more riveting version of All the Same, I would have to say. Those are some of the best beats on there, I would definitely say. Get Right's pretty good. How It Feels pretty good. Those are some busting ones, but I feel like Thank Me is about the same type of energy as RIP and How It Feel, but just in a more kind of this snazzy kind of concept. This is definitely a pretty snazzy beat, just one of the real hype ones. Thank Me is definitely like a real snazzy kind of hype one to kind of have for stunting and flexing and that type of stuff, just pulling up to a club and just looking real glitzy as far as that kind of goes. It's a good tune as far as that kind of happens. But talk about some of the songs I didn't recommend on this mixtape, which is not many, which is really just 5.5. There's kind of some awkward ones on here. Like I was kind of disappointed by the beat on Knob Broke and just the overall emphasis. That one was trying to be like a concert type song, but it just didn't really pull it off that well. I was kind of expecting like a better production on Knob Broke. That would have been better if that had been better. And like Styling was like another type tune, like How It Feel and Get Right, just kind of like a more hustled. Styling was just a poor rendition of that same sort of vibe that Damn Liar and Turn Up or Die kind of had. Just really didn't nail it at all. It's just kind of a weak one as far as that kind of happened. And then like Millions was just kind of like a slower song. That one was trying to be like a suaver type one, kind of like Escobar and Tonight and some of those type ones as far as that kind of happens. And All the Same. And like there's another one on there that I'm forgetting, like Just Got Word and some of those type ones, but it just didn't really nail it quite as well. This is kind of another dud one, which is surprising just because Jeezy really had like a suave edge on this particular album. That was just kind of a poor one that just didn't quite nail it quite as well. And then Evil was kind of an awkward one on here. Evil was just kind of an awkward beat that just was really kind of a clumsy sounding one. Just didn't really have that much of an attractive listen towards it. And then El Jefe intro is just kind of another poor one that just didn't really have an interesting kind of production. So some of these just didn't. I mean, there's not a ton of songs on this mixtape that really drag the project, but it is enough to kind of say that it's just kind of the concept that it is like a minor snag. I kind of feel like compared to like some of Jeezy's most cohesive projects like Thug Motivation 101 and The Recession, this one just kind of had a few snags that are just kind of some more dud-like productions and just kind of overall awkward fares that just didn't match up as much. But these are kind of minor complaints for the most part because Jeezy does hit a pretty good stride on here, and most of these songs are pretty kick-ass, and especially for a free mixtape, it just works pretty heavily. So that's just kind of the thing about it. So most of this album is like a mini rendition of like The Recession. There's just a couple kind of clumsy ones that is just kind of more kind of singular kind of ones that just kind of detract as far as that kind of happens. But so me basically recommending 10.5 songs out of 16 on this particular project. I'm going to go ahead and give this mixtape like a 7.75 out of 10. I feel like that's pretty damn good. Just a good overall score to kind of give this mixtape, especially considering that it's free. And it's a mixtape. That's why I kind of boosted the score somewhat. That's just kind of the concept about it. But the social score, I'm going to go ahead and give like the social score like an 8.5 out of 10. I feel like 2 hit singles plus a lot of music. I feel like 2 singles and a bunch of music videos for this project really helped bolster this particular project as far as that kind of happened. Just a lot of good promotion and overall social affability. There's just a lot of good contemporary type tunes on here that just really work pretty damn well. A lot of good social kind of affability, a lot of littiness about this aspect, some ladies tunes, some suaveness, some smoking songs, some stunt songs, some flex songs, some stuff like that, some good guests on here, and just overall good hookiness and catchiness that just works pretty damn well. So definitely like an 8.5 out of 10, just would have to say. It's really a good concept. So in terms of the future, like Jeezy just put out like a double album back in November. It's called like I might forgive, but I don't forget, or something like that. Definitely a good concept as far as that kind of happens. Definitely a good concept to get a Jeezy double album as far as that kind of happens. He does have another one called Come Shop With Me. Jeezy does have like another double album called Come Shop With Me that I'm eventually going to get to, but there are some other ones I'm going to get to. And this is definitely a pretty boisterous kind of project here. Definitely like the concept of it. Definitely have to recommend it. It's kind of like a good shot in the arm as far as Jeezy. It's one of his better projects from like the 2010s forward, I would have to say. Not to say he doesn't have a bunch more of those, but it's just kind of the concept. This is kind of one that's inspired and has some good tracks on here that you don't want to ignore. Has a pretty chart heavy song in R.I.P. and it's just overall the concept that he's kind of inspired on this particular project, and it's worth definitely looking into if you never fucked with this project or just gave it like seldom thoughts.